The following is a presentation of Foosball Radio.
If it's too loud, you're too old.
We could not believe it. We just went, oh!
I was a good bar player.
Okay.
I was very vocal.
Very vocal.
I wanted to win.
This is Todd Lafredo. You're listening to Foosball Radio.
It's FoosTalk Live.
You talking to me?
Compelling and lively banter.
Are you going to talk to us?
Talking foosball.
Foosball was how I measured my value as a man. You took that away.
Players and fans, promoters and pros. Unedited and raw.
Talk.
Living in the moment.
We have a lot of important things to talk about.
All while practicing social distancing.
Cool. We'll talk. No big whoop.
Let's get this thing started. FoosTalk Live. Coming to you live from the Foosball Radio studios, it's the 137th episode of FoosTalk Live. Well, hey there, it's Tom Robinson, and I want to take a few moments out to personally thank our Patreon pillars for their support of Foosball Radio and FoosTalk Live. James Sparky Castillo, Cameron Burrows, Mike Green, Jimmy Love, Dwayne Stewart, Judy Schober, Jamie Kunst, Rob Cutler, Reeve Rector, Clay Toomey, and Adam Gilson. Thank you. Your support brings continued and expanding content from Foosball Radio and FoosTalk Live as we cover the greatest sport on earth. Visit patreon.com/Foosball Radio to find out how to become a Foosball Radio Patreon. Learn about the exclusive benefits we offer you. We'd like to welcome on board a brand new sponsor. FoosTalk Live is brought to you by Original Leonhardt. The Leonhardt Tournament model is the most popular foosball table at the ITSF World Cup. Designed and handcrafted in Germany, order online and have it delivered to your door. Visit www.original-leonhardt-usa.com and use promo code FoosTalk to save 10% off your purchase price. Yes, it is episode 137, and we are coming to you live on a Wednesday night. I'm Tom Robinson, and well, this is a little unusual, a little out of sorts, but we are regardless doing this because, well, we've got to make accommodations on occasion for schedules as they are, especially during the holiday season. So tonight, of course, is being brought to you live on Twitch TV. And we are doing this to, play back as well on Sunday. So you'll get a chance to hear it later on. Regardless, I am joined, of course, by the greatest play-by-play foosball announcer of all time, Jim Stevens. Hello, Jim.
Hi, Tom. Hi, everybody. And it is a little odd being here on a Wednesday night, but we got to do what we got to do because we got to keep this thing rolling. It was really exciting last week to get started on this top 25 greatest singles players in the history of the American Tour, male singles players. And I'm looking forward to continuing this as we begin to count down to eventually who's number one. And there are some questions about who that's going to be. Also some questions about 16 through 20, which is what we're going to look at tonight.
And of course, there's already been some controversy flying around. Speaking of controversy, well, I don't know if he's controversial, but he likes to be. That would be Adam Gilson from Ventura, California. Hello.
Oh, yeah, I'm not controversial. I thought you were about to bring in Mark, who is all about controversy.
I was a head fake.
No, there was a head fake. It was a pump fake. It was a dink. I love it. Yeah, controversy. Yes, that's always happening with this. We have, oh, look at this. Right off the bat, speaking of controversy, Lewis Cartwright. I'm only here to hear my name. Well, there you go, Lewis.
Is that true?
Lewis's modus operandi is singular and well appreciated. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, no, let's get this party started.
Lewis. Yeah.
I like controversy. I like fire. I was a pyromaniac as a kid. We've gone over that, and I think those urges are gone. But I like to metaphorically set fire to everything else I'm involved in, including any list I can participate in. So let's throw some gasoline on this party and not call the fire department.
Wouldn't have it any other way. And maybe, now that Lewis is mentioning it, I probably should have put him on my list, and maybe he could have been on this list eventually. But...
Oops. That happens sometimes, Jim. It's okay. It's all right.
Tough coming up with 25,
Yeah, well, you know what? I'm just a little bit of a foreshadowing. We might hear his name tonight. I don't know. We'll see. But
we've heard it a couple times already, and that may be it for the night. We'll see.
So, give me an idea, guys. Since Sunday night and the first five, what have you heard, Adam? What have you heard?
What I've heard is that, well, I don't know. I mean, we're just going to start talking about what we're hearing now, the feedback we're
Yeah,
getting.
I'm
Like,
just curious. Are
I
you getting death threats or what's
no,
happening?
but I have gotten a lot of feedback that there has been some discussion about, where Jeep maybe should have been on that list, maybe a
Okay.
little bit higher, maybe where Kevin Keeter was on that list, and I don't know. I mean, it's still in the early goings. We have to start really talking about it and looking at each, as each week passes and just seeing the narrative that unfolds here. So I'm not going to say
Sure.
much more than that.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Jim, what about you? Have you heard anything? Any scuttlebutt?
No, not necessarily heard anything, but I have thought further about it. And one of the things that occurred to me is, Ron Nevoy is on our top 25 list. Ron Nevoy was also on our top 50 list. Um, Ron Nevoy is not in the Hall of Fame. And I'm not sure he really gets a lot of consideration for being put in the Hall of Fame. Yet here he is on the two lists we've done so far, top 50, top 25. Ron Nevoy is on there, which maybe he needs to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's
And Mark,
good.
what about you? What have you stirred up?
I've actually heard, ironically, I've heard nothing but positive things, and I think it's because we're at the bottom of the list that I think people are a little bit more comfortable with where things land, the bottom of the list. Now, as we rise up the list, there might be more reaction to
Yeah,
where names landed.
more
But I think
controversy, more difficulty. Yeah, well,
I
that's
expected more controversy, but we got a lot of positive feedback. When I say
okay.
positive feedback, like 3 or 4 people, by the way, said, "Hey, that was a great job." But just to recap, Jim, maybe you were going to do that already. We should probably recap the 25 to 21 for anyone who didn't hear last week's show, if you have that handy, and then we'll just, I guess, we just get rolling, right, fellas? Or are we doing something
Yeah,
else?
I can
Okay.
certainly do that if Tom doesn't have it handy.
Sure.
But
I've got it.
coming in at number 25 was the great Oklahoma player Kevin Keeter. Ron
Mhm.
Nevoy, the aforementioned Ron Nevoy, at number 24. Dave Gumison, one of the voters of this, and a guy maybe that would have been higher if he had played more singles, basically the second half of his career. Greg G. Perry, and I talked about it last week. I would have had him a little. In fact, I did have him a little higher than this, and maybe he deserved to be a little higher. And then the great John Smith, out of Texas, and again, Smith out of that Houston area that produced so many great players. So I thought it was a pretty solid 21 through 25. But like Mark said, it's the bottom of the list. How do you really judge it? How are you going to have strong opinions about it one way or the other? Are there surprises about someone who is on there that maybe you don't think should be? Maybe that would be the only one. But I'm pretty secure with what we did last week. Feeling good about it.
Yeah, it's just a quick technical mention about last week's show. We did have a little bit of an issue when it came to our recording, and the podcast wasn't completely aired. It was everything but about the last 20 minutes or so. But we did manage to get all of the countdown in. I know we missed a little bit of commentary about John Smith. I was wondering if you guys would like to lend your commentary about John Smith and his position at number 21. Jim?
Just reflecting again on a guy who came out of that very difficult foosball hotbed of Houston, Texas. I mean, that was, if there wasn't a fight at the local DYP each and every night, there was something wrong, because it was just incredibly competitive. And out of that group of so many early Tornado players, and then guys also like Tracy McMillan and others. John Smith, pure Texas player, grade 5, grade 3, and still to this day, when you watch him play, he is an impressive player. So, John Smith coming in at, I think, just about right for him, number 21.
Yeah, and Mark?
Yeah, I don't want to belabor too much, but because Jim said it all perfectly, I'll just say that tribalism is a thing where people break up into their factions, and there's North California and Southern California, there's North Texas and South Texas, and there's these alphas that come out of each of these geographies, and John Smith represented that southern part of Texas as a dominant force, as they went to battle with northern Texas and winning world championships in his own right with his brother Daniel Smith in open doubles and open singles. So great player and well deserved at 21.
And Adam?
Yeah, I'm going to reiterate what I said Sunday night. I was talking to Mike Green, one of the players at the time, still a player now, of course. And what was the intensity level like for a player like John Smith? What can we compare it to now? For especially those of us who've never seen him play, like myself. And he said it was a Johnny Horton. For him, it was a Johnny Horton, which is, very telling of that kind of reputation that he does have. People find him, or maybe was abrasive found him to be abrasive, as you would any kind of champion. Putting him only on the table here. I'm not talking off the table, which is fine. We all have our foosball personalities, like Mark, who has very little personality to begin with. But, he does what he can. But again, John Smith echoing or evoking the imagery or the reputation of Horton on the table is pretty much, I think, all you need to know about John Smith at number 21.
Yeah, I buy that comparison in terms of the intensity on the table, no doubt about it. I think Johnny's certainly more of a showman and really took a great pride in being a showman on the table, where John was not. John was not playing to the crowd. John was going to interact with the opponents, no doubt, and he was going to be a very high-energy type player, but from a more competitive, fiercely mean almost competitor. And so maybe a little different than Horton, but I certainly get the comparison as far as energy goes.
Well, I think that certainly brings us back to that point now. Of course, now we can officially step off into number 20 through 16 this evening for the top 25 male singles players on the U.S. Tour, which we will get to momentarily. Now, even though it's a school night and it's a Wednesday night, we still need to imbibe. What Jim and I like to do right about this time is to reveal our favorite IPA. Now, I know you just got out of work, Jim, and you got to go back tomorrow, but are you partaking?
Yeah, no question about it. You just said it. I work today. Heck yeah, I'm partaking after work. This is something out of your neck of the woods, actually, Mark. It is from Normal, Illinois. Now, Normal is not your neck of the woods, but Illinois is. This is from the Destal Brewery. It's called Tour Bus, and it's part of their, let's see here. It's their Deadhead IPA series. So as you can see, pretty cool. Tour Bus. Yeah, it's an IPA, single IPA at 7.4%, 25 IBUs, and pretty solid. Good stuff. I've already had a few sips, as you could tell, but enjoying it.
Do they mix any magic mushrooms on that tour bus? That's what I'd like to know.
I'll let you know in a few minutes.
Okay. All right. We'll check in with you. So, Adam, pray tell, what perhaps do you have?
What I have is 3 finals and 100 pages that I have to grade in the next 4 days. So I haven't even had time to go to the store to get one. So unfortunately,
you're a school night guy.
I have to pass. But next time, I got my eye on one for next week. So I'm looking forward to it. And I'm going back to the Pacific Northwest breweries for mine for next week.
I like it. I like it.
There you go. A little preview of coming attractions. I like that. And Mark, I've noticed you've been quaffing some brown liquid there. What pray tell is that?
There's nothing more benign than decaffeinated coffee with like peppermint mocha creamer in it.
You drinking decaf?
Really?
Dude, listen, I'm domesticated. I don't drink alcohol. Except for foosball tournaments where I black out once in a while. I don't drink alcohol. All right? Boom.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense, but all right. Go ahead, Tom.
Well, I'm feeling a little self-conscious now, but that's okay. Mark, we appreciate your input. Okay. Here's one from an employee-owned brewery. And, of course, we all know Harpoon. Harpoon IPA. Which, by the way, it's been a while. I mean, I had a good 4-pack of this a while ago, but Boston, Mass. This is the label, and this is hoppy. It's balanced and crisp. So let's see how balanced and crisp. Let's see if I cut my teeth on this one. Not bad for something as sharp as a harpoon. There you go.
Yeah, it evokes memories of the murder of very large, intelligent creatures in the North Atlantic. I love it.
Yeah. Well, here's to y'all on a Wednesday live on Twitch TV. Here's to your Twitch.
What are you laughing about, Adam? Stop laughing.
It was just.
He's one of those guys.
I like whales.
He likes whales.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was not the right whale to pick with.
Is it not? Okay.
Anyways.
Well, regardless, we do want to tip a glass tonight, of course, to our top 25 male singles players in the U.S. Tour. Here's to you guys. Let's see how this list turns out.
Here's Cheers to you
Jeep,
guys. And
Jeep,
don't be
you
a
were
Moby.
too low. Jeep, you were too low. John Smith, you were too high. But hey, who's crying?
You know what? It's this kind of music that just gets me going every time. School night or not, you know? It's still appropriate.
So
there we go.
Just to answer some questions in Twitch, and thank you all. We just started this channel brand new on Sunday, and we already have 30 followers. I think we'll be looking pretty good here as the time progresses. Hard as I can ask why the Wednesday show. We kind of talked about it earlier, but it's the holiday season, and Sunday wasn't going to work, so we're here on a Sunday or Wednesday night, and we have a first time chat from Diego Zek. Hi from Lima,
Right,
Peru.
Peru?
Yeah.
Really?
Peru. Hola, senor.
Home
Are you
of,
a- are you a-
Noelia Arcos, of course, the great lady player on the Tornado Tour.
Yes. Yeah, she's terrific.
That's awesome.
I
No,
believe they also impeached their president today.
they
And
did.
arrested him. Yeah.
That I gotta
Sorry to
say.
bring that up there, Diego.
Yeah, good one. Hey, way to bring down the house there. What did we talk about whales some more, Jim?
Yeah.
More
Two
whale
for two.
jokes? Okay. No, it's great because the thing about Twitch TV, yes, you can get it anywhere, and of course we are live, quite literally live. So I know that we mentioned Lewis Cartwright's name earlier. I don't know. Maybe we should mention him again when it comes to the flashback. With great moments in foosball history, this is a FoosTalk Live flashback.
4-1 in the fifth. And Lewis Cartwright with the ball on the 3. A chance to win the World Championship. Cartwright from snake position fires it to the near side in one of the classic all-time World Singles Championships. A match played at an extremely high level. Truly a joy to watch. Lewis Cartwright of Las Vegas, Nevada wins the title.
Just a phenomenal performance by Lewis Cartwright right there. Getting his head back together again, collecting his wits, playing smart. Very smart foosball.
Listen in next time for another great moment in foosball history. It's FoosTalk Live. The young dulcet tones of Jim Stevens in 1996? Is that what that was?
1996. Yeah, I think I was 16, just getting started in the business. No, and that was a period, and we'll talk about this perhaps in a few minutes here. But but it was an impressive performance from a guy. It was not an unexpected performance either, based on how he had been playing the last few previous years. But we'll get into that here in a minute.
I think the sad thing. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
I was gonna say the sad thing about that particular flashback is, I believe that's against Robbie, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
we could well hear 6 flashbacks, all with Robbie in the final, as we count down this top 25.
Yes,
probably true.
So,
Probably
You are
true.
such a dork.
anyway,
I love it.
Well,
I suck.
well, one of the things I have to say, watching the video, and it's pretty remarkable to see something from '96 and the style of clothing and the way people just look in general. But the massive amount of audience. I mean, there was a lot of people watching that match, full stands.
That was the ESPN year, and Dante Bichette. There was the baseball strike, right? Dante Bichette. That was the
that was 90. That was 94.
Okay, I'm
but
getting
there
my
was
years mixed
still, those mid 90s, those World Championship events were really well attended. It was sort of that right in the smack dab in the middle of that second golden era, and they were hugely attended. And it was in a ballroom, Tom, that could hold 200, 250 tables. There at the Hyatt in the middle of DFW airport. This was the second year they had it there. And it was just a monstrous ballroom, big stands, great setup, huge inside Foos booth, as you remember, Mark. The booths we used to have there were gigantic islands.
Well, you needed all the space for all the cameras and equipment. It wasn't the digital age yet, so Jim had video cassettes. But here's the crazy thing about those tournaments is that there was enough tables so you could play singles. And now those tournaments still went to 4 or 5 a.m., but it might have been expert doubles and rookie doubles and amateur singles. They got open singles was played. I believe open singles was played at a reasonable hour. I think it might have been played at like 8 or 9 p.m. on a Sunday or something. So you still could get the crowds. It's much more difficult now, I guess, with the table volume and how it's managed. They play these events much later, the finals, right? Am I Am I on the right
Yeah,
spot?
there's some truth to that for sure. And but that's just how it was back then as well. It was just a lot of people. When you have 5, 6, 700 people at an event, there are going to be some pretty good crowds in the finals area, especially for a match like this that was so intriguing going into it and turned out to be one of the best matches of the 90s. And again, that
Yeah.
decade produced 8 different world singles champions in the 10 years. Only Terry Moore and Tommy Atkinson won twice, and
Wow.
and 6 other individuals won one time during that decade. So, and this was right in the
Amazing.
middle of it. But it
Now, was
maybe
that,
will,
was that a-
maybe not. Maybe that might be it for Lewis Cartwright for tonight. We'll see.
yeah,
Hey,
well, we'll
Jim,
see. But
Jim,
was that double dip, by the way, with that final match?
Now, I believe Cartwright won the winners, and
Yeah.
then Robbie won the first set of the
Yes.
final,
Oh,
and
got
it
it.
looked like he was coming back to win. And then Lewis was able to turn it around, hold him off, and eventually come out on top. Because Lewis, a master of adjustment, and just a guy who knew how to win.
Got it.
Jim,
Got it, yeah.
what in your career in the United States, what's the largest attended tournament you've been to?
I think probably here in the United States, it would have been 93, 94 Tornado World Championships. And then a couple of early or late 90s, early 2000s Vegas events were also just monsters. But my sense is, and I don't know the exact numbers from 93 and 94, but they were hugely attended, probably in the 800 plus range.
Wow.
For those. Biggest tournament, though, I've ever attended in terms of numbers was a P4P tournament that had over 1,000 players.
1,000. That's cool. I'd love to see that sometime. 1,000
You'd
players.
ask Dave Currington. The numbers get mixed up over time. But if you watch the 93 or whatever 94 tournament that was with Dante Bichette, ESPN was there and they speak to like 3,000 entries. That's 3,000 entries spread over lots of events. But
Okay.
thousands of entries, that kind of. So I don't know. Dave is probably a better, or Link is probably a better resource to know the numbers of people that attended. It was a lot of people, though. It was a lot
Yeah,
of
and
people.
now you see that kind of number. So, for pool tournaments, that's a regional tournament for 3,000 players. And when they get to Vegas, it's like 10,000 players.
Yeah.
So, well, anyway, we hopefully will see that very soon in our sport too. So here we go. We've got the top 25 male singles players on the U.S. tour. What do you say we continue with the list? Are you guys ready for this?
Let's do this, dude.
All right, here we go.
Throughout the history of professional foosball competition, the top players have waged war. Many have tried, and many have failed. Last year, we presented the top 50 foosball players in the history of the game. Now, FoosTalk Live returns to bring you the names of those who stand above the rest. The top 25 singles foosball players on the U.S. Tour. This list has been compiled by experts, stored for weeks in the Mark Torres Enchilada Pantry, locked in the vault of the firm Stevens, Torres, Gilson, and Gummison, and hand-delivered under armed guard to the studios of FoosTalk Live. Tonight, we present to you the top singles players on the U.S. Tour, ranked from number 20 through number 16. Here now is the number 20 ranked male singles foosball player on the U.S. Tour, Don Swan.
Yeah, Don Swan, one of the few players on this list who never won a World Open Singles Championship, but it doesn't matter. This guy was one of the most entertaining players I've ever had the privilege of watching or commentating. He was so creative in singles. I mean, he could score from everywhere. He could do it in transition. His ability to read on the fly was just remarkable. There was a stretch in the mid-90s where he was absolutely considered the best singles player in the world. And, for maybe 6, 8, 10 months, he was just on this roll, playing super high speed. Everything was high speed. Kind of first broke through back in 1986. It couldn't have been more than about 17 or 18. Don, by the way, out of Chicago, Mark's hometown. Second hometown. And then he was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2018. Had a total of, he broke through in 1986 at about the age of 18 or 19 with a second place finish at the World Championships in Dynamo Open Singles. If you remember, there were tornado events and Dynamo events at that 86 World Championship. He was second, kind of in a surprise finish in Dynamo Open singles. 4 total major championship wins on the Tornado Tour from 1995 through 1998. Also third, people forget about this, but the famous match where Tommy Atkinson and Russ King defeat Don Swan and Steve Viney in the Open doubles final. Just an amazing match. The first big Open final that I ever covered on the major tour, big Open World Championship final. Don Swan also finished third that year in a very, very tough field in Open singles as well. It was Tommy Atkinson, it was Terry Moore, and then it was Don Swan, who had a second in doubles and a third in singles. In 1995, maybe his best year. He was first at the inaugural Hall of Fame Classic down in Houston, and then won the National Singles Championship in absolutely one of the best matches I've ever seen when he defeated Todd Lafredo. And I don't think the ball ever stopped. Two sets, 5-4 in both of them in the 5th game. The ball never stopped for either of them. Lafredo was having fun, but Swan was able to come out on top. And then won the 1997 Masters Singles Championship in what at the time we called the 14-minute masterpiece. He beat Terry Moore 3 straight games in 14 minutes, which was just unheard of back then. Since then, we've seen Tony Sprademan beat guys in 8 or 10 minutes, but back then, 14 minutes was extraordinary. He finished number 49 on our top 50 of last year, number 20 here, and that should tell you something as well. 49 on the overall best player list, all the way up at 20 in singles. Again, a man who I think really pushed the envelope on singles. We see a lot of what Don Swan did in Tony Sprademan's game now, the ability to shoot from the 5. I think Tony is the best ever at shooting with the 5 in singles. Don Swan would be number 2 in my opinion. So Don Swan coming in at number 20.
Mark?
I love Don Swan. I played with him twice in 3500. They used to have an event called 3500 Limited, and I was a rookie, and I could get these good partners. I played with Terry Moore and Thor Donovan and Randy Stark and Don Swan in 3500 Limited. And Don Swan, man, is so intense and like so focused. And he reminded me of Thor, and that you couldn't tell when he was practicing or when he was competing, because he just had that whole intense thing. He did this thing where he wound up on his toes and got up, and he like pulled his shoulder sleeve up, and he would check the points and pull a point halfway across. It was his own little head trip. But he was so focused and into it. The transition game was just nuts, man. He was so fast rod to rod. And because he projected that kind of energy, he intimidated. He was intimidating. Not that he was trying to be intimidating. He was intimidating because of the energy. You felt this presence. There were a couple of guys in the 90s that they got followed around. And no matter, like we talked about this before, it could be number 1 versus number 2 seed on table 1, or Johnny Horton on table 36. And everyone's at table 36. It could be Don Swan at table 50. Doubles or singles, and people are over there because the color and the energy and charisma. And one last thing, he's in the Hall of Fame, and there are people with body of work less than Don Swan that aren't in the Hall of Fame yet, and that kind of speaks to how much presence and charisma and drama he brought to the sport. It's so lingering and held on for so long that people knew they just ushered him into the Hall of Fame. So great spot for Don Swan.
Yeah, well said, Mark. Well said, Jim. I'm going to say a story about Don Swan when I first met him at Worlds in I think 2002 or 3, sometime when I had just started playing. But I had been watching him for years at that point with Inside Foos video, of course. And he was a player that I finally got to play for the first time in the early 2000s. And I remember his level of focus and his ability to leave the room. Like, he'd be there, and I don't know if this would you say this is past his prime? Is like the early 2000s past his prime? Like, I hate using that
Maybe
phrase.
just passed.
Just passed.
Yeah. Just passed.
But you could still feel that. You could like those tomato seeds you can't quite scrub off your plate. Like, he's just still there. He's still prevalent. And it's just, and that is a force to be reckoned with that can sit in your psyche for days and weeks and months, because that is exactly what Don Swan did then. What he was like before, I can't even imagine. But later that day, I think it might have been the next day after we played, I went to go talk to him over there by the gross, disgusting, overcooked chicken fingers with the disgusting room temperature barbecue sauce that they always have at these things, right? Mm. And I go and I shake his hand. I say, hey, I just wanted to say, that was a great match. Thank blah, blah, blah. He beat me out, And he responded, yeah, no, it's good. And I was talking back to him and saying, yeah, and it was good, whatever. I'm just making small talk because I'm nervous. And then it occurred to me, he was not talking to me. He was shaking my hand and he was looking at me, but he was kind of looking over my shoulder, and he was just talking to somebody behind me while still being really polite with me. And it wasn't like he was being rude. I think that's just like the extra dimensional world that somebody like Don Swan lives in. Anybody that has that many collars popped and that many hats pointed this way and that way at once just lives like that. So Don Swan here at 20, yeah, he's here at 20, he's here at 7, he's here at negative 30 all at the same time. He's like light.
You know, a different kind of cat, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
He lived life differently, and he certainly played the game differently as well. And it really showed that he came at it from a different angle than anybody else did. And he was his intensity, his focus, his multi-dimensional abilities as well, all factored into bringing him here to number 20.
I got to say that the card that I got in my my pack of the player cards, Don Swan is one of my favorites as far as just the expression on his face and the way he looks. I'm not even sure, what is that? Is that a bottle he's holding on to in the
Who knows?
picture? Is that
Could be vodka, could be water. Could be,
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. But it's one of my favorite cards in the collection a small collection of cards that I have. Anyway, so shall we proceed to our next?
Yes.
Coming in at number 19 on the FoosTalk Live Top 25 Singles Foosball Players on the U.S. Tour, Lewis Cartwright.
All right, Lewis, you're in. All right, buddy. Number 19, Lewis Cartwright, simply one of the smartest, toughest players the sport has ever produced. A great forward, a great goalie, and a great singles player. Exploded onto the tour in 1993 with open singles wins at the kickoff and the U.S. Open, and quickly became one of the best all-around players during the second golden era, as he again won open doubles in '94 as well. In 1996, as we heard a little earlier, he won the Tornado World Singles title in Dallas in a really, really good match against Robert Mares. And he remained one of the best singles players for a few more years. And then Lewis kind of began to turn his attention over to playing doubles, playing goalie in particular. And he would go eventually during the early 2000s to 4 World Championship finals in 6 years, 2000, 2001, 2003, and then again in 2005 when he and Tom Yore won the open doubles title there. One of the most versatile and competitive players of that second golden era. Lewis Cartwright finished number 23 on our list of the top 50 from last year, came in at number 19 here. And another guy that I think maybe began to focus more on doubles than singles, and ended up obviously being thought of as one of the best goalies of all time, one of the best all-around players of all time. But boy, was he a good singles player. And I think, Mark, as you may remember, and maybe this was a little before your time, but there was a period where many of us thought that the best player in the world at the time was Lewis Cartwright. Just the way he could play both positions, play singles, just the way how big he was in big situations. But in singles in particular, when you're a great goalie, when you're a great forward, when you're such an intelligent player, you're going to have success. He certainly did. That 96 World Championship, evidence of that, and the other titles as well. So coming in here at number 19, the great listener himself, Lewis Cartwright.
So I had the great pleasure of doing the induction speech for Lewis Cartwright into the Hall of Fame, because the person he wanted to induct him couldn't make it. And so I was the default choice for that moment. Thank you, Lewis. Or screw you, Lewis. But I was there in 1990 when he won novice singles, because I won amateur doubles at the Worlds. I'll slide that in every single broadcast. I won amateur doubles. He won novice singles. Here's where I think I know my friends, right? I think I know them. I think I know what makes them tick, because I pay attention to that kind of thing. And I like the psychoanalysis of all this stuff. And I can't tell you, like Lewis gets a lot of praise within foosball, and even for me at times, for being this really smart, calculated player. Sometimes I waffle on that, and I wonder if it's the whole ignorance is bliss thing. I wonder if it's like the one brain cell that doesn't allow him to overthink things, that keeps him like a juggernaut, just keeps pressing with pressure because he can't overthink anything anyway. You following? No. I love Lewis. He's awesome. I've seen him destroy people. One thing that Lewis had going for him for sure was a fearlessness. He had two things that I'll never forget, and these are things that we talked about years ago. One thing is fearless, not afraid of anybody any man, anytime. He's not afraid of the moment. The other thing that he always told me, he was never going to do any, one thing he put in his brain, he was never going to do anything stupid with the ball ever on a pressure point. So you could count on him to go brush up or brush down and go up or down on his rollover. He did have a calculus for sure. Even it was not any more than 4 or 5 years ago when he was playing with Fernando, and Fernando got completely bricked, and Lewis went up there and started drilling the rookie goalie. It was too little, too late. They lost anyway. But Lewis started going into a dissertation on why it was so easy to score on the guy and why Fernando couldn't. But anyway, great player. Also could be argued to be higher. I absolutely was there when he was one of the best players in the world, and if he would have persisted on his trajectory, he could have been higher on this list. Another one of those guys that he is where he is because he chose to not go any further in the game.
That's kind of true. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, what is there to say about Lewis Cartwright that he hasn't already said about himself? I don't know. I will say this, and this is a theme we're going to see in this top 25, is that you have so many of them be goalies. So smart, so thoughtful, so intelligent that in their singles game, which we talked about on Sunday, there's an art form to it. There's a finesse to it. There's a complete court awareness to it that you have to be good at to win. And so many of these players defensively are so good. Lewis Cartwright, of course. Lewis Cartwright, one of the few players in the United States tour with a defense named after him, the Lewis Shuffle. Lewis, of course, took the Louisiana Shuffle, and I always say he took it to college and made it smarter. So that fast thing that's happening is happening everything for a reason. I'm talking smack about you, Lewis, of course, because you're there, and you're listening, and I appreciate you being here to hear this. But again, and I should have saved this for tonight, but I talked about it on Sunday when you're flipping burgers, and you lost a burger patty in between the grill, and instead of picking up the grill, you just thought you'd just try something even more complicated and put just a bunch of tongs in there. And I remember just Trevor Park just sitting there staring at you, looking at you, thinking, this is like Worlds 20 years ago. What's going on here? What are you doing? But again,
that's what I mean about the brain cell.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's still up for debate, Mark. But all that joking aside, Lewis, your game, which I have always deeply respected and always thought was really awesome to see how you work on those different levels when you care to, which is not. I don't think a lot of people exist in that realm, which is awesome. It's just so completely fun to watch. And even though I saw you play at a DYP last summer at Trevor's, and it's all still there, so you could see why you were sitting here at number 18. Where are we at here? 19. Good
19.
Gosh, I got lost editorializing. Anyways, Lewis Cartwright, burger flipper extraordinaire, 19.
Yeah, amazing. And there is an argument that he could be a little higher on this list for sure. Maybe to some degree, and I think when he was inducted into the Hall of Fame, we all kind of talked about it that maybe it should have been earlier. People maybe had forgotten about him a little bit, just how great Lewis Cartwright was.
Now, for the player coming in at number 18 on the FoosTalk Live Top 25 Singles Foosball Players on the U.S. Tour, Rick Martin.
Rick Martin out of Boise, Idaho, was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2012. The rocket launcher was truly one of the greats of the 70s. Had this push kick, a really, really good push kick that was just had such great lateral speed and depth to it. He was a really talented athlete. He was a baseball player as a kid and really thought he would become a pro, would eventually get to the MLB. But he found foosball in 1976. That kind of derailed his baseball career. He got addicted to foosball, and 18 months later won the World Singles Championship in St. Louis. He was the singles winner when Lafredo and Jackson won doubles at this gigantic tournament. And again, that was his only major open singles title on the TS Tour, but it was a big one. Talk about big tournaments. That tournament in 1977 in St. Louis, the estimates are in the 1,500 to 2,000 range in terms of number of players that were there. I know the open singles chart was something like a 640 player chart.
Wow.
It was just an immense event, so big, and he outlasted the field. His only win, his only major championship win. He won a doubles title on Dynamo a little later on, but that was it. That one win, and he gets all the way to number 18, deservingly so. Not only because of that win, but just the way he went about it. And also when you listen to his contemporaries talk about him, they all hold him in just the highest esteem. To have been there when he was there, to have watched this guy, he was absolutely one of the very, very best players of the TS Tour. Passed away unexpectedly in January of 2020. I remember it well. But the legend of the rocket launcher continues. He was number 20 on our top 50. And again, a testament to just what his peers think of him, the legend and legacy that he left behind. Number 18 here, out of the Pacific Northwest, the great Rick Martin.
I'm going to actually defer my time to Adam Gilson. I didn't know Rick Martin that well. I will say that didn't he come out of nowhere and win like a pro doubles? Like
he won an expert singles in Vegas a few years ago. Came back to the tour, and here he is, a Hall of Famer playing expert singles, which he hadn't played in 20 plus years, right? And he came out and won the event. And he eventually even started being a snake shooter, started shooting the snake shot, and really had a second career, maybe for the last decade of his life.
That's the one thing I'll just say. I never won an expert. I won a couple expert singles in California, never got close to winning a major. And for Rick Martin to come out in his twilight stages of foosball and win an expert singles title at a major event is a remarkable achievement. It's an incredible achievement.
It actually
Most people never win an expert singles event. And so I'll just say that that's a testament to greatness and where it comes from between the ears. And even if you don't have all the speed, lateral speed, and all the tools, if you have the mental strength, he had it in 77, he had it in whenever the hell that was, 2015. Incredible. Adam, though, I want you to take over because you probably have a lot more to say about Rick Martin.
Yeah, and of course about you, Mark. You started in your twilight, so I thought that was always nice for you to make that connection here with Rick. Rick, of course, Jim so eloquently already put his pedigree, what he has done on the table, but I want to talk about what he's done off the table. I want to talk about how you cannot talk to a single person during that time frame that knew Rick Martin and didn't speak of him in the most loving manner. Our good friend Brad Loreen speaks of him fondly. They were good friends. And everybody that I talked to, specifically my father, Terry Gilson, who was around at that time frame at tournament soccer, but he was not a player. I mean, he played, but he was behind the scenes. And I'm going to try to condense this story as much as possible because in the process of the last couple months of researching this list, I've been calling people, messaging people, trying to figure out just like the background, the human element. And there was about 3 different stories that I heard about somebody's act of kindness. I don't want to get into personal, like the actual details of it, because I didn't talk to the person who it happened to. If I'm being as kosher as possible here, but so I didn't have their permission. But I do know that at a couple different tournaments throughout the span during the late 70s, talking to my dad about something that was happening with another player, he realized it was Rick Martin that was the person that was being so supportive and helpful behind the scenes. And those are stories. Those are the things that I think keep bringing us to these foosball tournaments, these wacky, silly things with all of us neurotic, psychotic people that go to these tournaments on these weekends and spend so much time doing this because of the Rick Martins, because of the people. Yes, we praise their skill, their ability on the table, and that which they can do. But it's those moments that off the table that define us even more so than that, and to just know that people like that exist and do what they do within our little humble sport is heartwarming. Number 18, Rick Martin.
Oh, it's good stuff. Good stuff, and well-deserved here. Despite just the one championship, still a man deservingly at number 18.
Here's the player who's ranked number 17 on the FoosTalk Live Top 25 Singles Foosball Players on the U.S. Tour. Johnny Lott.
Number 17, and this may be controversial, maybe not with everyone, but one of the game's great early innovators, no question about it. On the 5-row, for one thing, several of the moves that he created live to this day, but in singles as well. He's in that generation He wasn't the first generation. He was the second generation, basically, of players who took what the first group of players did and kind of evolved it into what we now consider the modern way of playing foosball. His endeavors on the promotional and table development fronts are well documented. He was technical director on the 1982 film Long Shot, starring Leif Garrett and Jim Stevens, and then developed the striker table in the mid 80s, right on through the early 90s. Not everything that Johnny Lott did was successful, but as a player, he was certainly one of the very best from the 70s TS Tour, and in singles in particular. Had a few wins in open singles on the TS Tour, mostly in 1977 when he won 3 open singles titles, third at the 76 World Championships in open singles as well, really his first big breakthrough. And then he won the World Open Singles Championship in 1980 before he kind of moved on from playing the game. Obviously, once TS crashed, he played a little bit more on the Dynamo Tour, helped promote the Dynamo Tour as well with Kathy Brainerd in the early 1980s. A very innovative player and promoter, no doubt about it. Again, not everything works for Johnny Lott or worked for him, but a lot did when it came to him playing the game. Number 21 overall in our top 50 of last year. Number 17 here on our list of greatest American Tour singles players of the male variety, Johnny Lott.
Yeah, I've had quite a few conversations about Johnny Lott with people who played alongside him, with him, against him. And innovation is the key word you keep repeating, and it's true. The guy, I can appreciate the way his mind kind of works in terms of foosball. He was the progenitor for all types of new passing systems and different ways of looking at the sport. And of course, he helped support Kathy Brainerd with the Foosball Sports Almanac. But he does get tons of credit for having new ideas about how to compete in foosball, and even some runway in terms of supporting the promotion of foosball. And we won't get into I wasn't there for a lot of this, so there were some limitations there. That's not the purpose of this dialogue, but I think that having never really seen him play, except for maybe some video on YouTube of him playing nets for Doug Furry, maybe, which it was a wilder game back then. It was a lot more physical game. You had these big brutish guys, just kind of a heavy-handed sport back then. Credit to Johnny Lott for when people were playing a rougher, more rugged style of play, he was winning and winning consistently. So great job to Johnny Lott being here above Lewis Cartwright. How you like that, Lewis? You like that, Lewis? Live with it, baby.
Okay, Adam.
Wow. What an intro. So Johnny Lott is somebody that I asked my dad about, who knew him when Johnny was just a kid. That's what my dad referred to him as a kid, and not disparagingly so. Just he was a kid at that time in the mid 70s. And the thing that my dad always said about him, if there was one recurring theme, was that he was the showman. He was a showman. And I never knew what that meant because, again, so many of us, I think, are so disconnected from that time period of the golden age of foosball that Johnny Lott was a part of, and so many of these people on this list are a part of. What does that mean to be a showman? Well, I will tell you, in 2002, I was very weirdly fortunate to be at the rollout of the Warrior Foosball table at a random restaurant bar in Long Beach, California. It was before the big tournament that happened in 2003 or was that 2000? That might have been 2004, the one at the Rio. And it was Johnny Lott was there. So I was just new to foosball. I didn't really know anybody. And it's me in this back room with this Warrior table that's just fresh off the wherever it just came from. And it's me and Johnny Lott, Greg Jeep Perry, Brandon Flaherty. And they're arguing about the finer points of what a rollover is or is not. And then they all start deciding to play, and they ask me if I wanted to play. So it's me and Johnny Lott, who I grew up hearing stories about as the showman, playing Jeep Perry, who I've known about for years, and Brandon Flaherty on this brand new table in this back room of this restaurant in Long Beach, California. And all I remember was every time Johnny got the ball and every time he shot, there was this leg kick coming out at you like this and slapping down on the tile It was amazing. It was like the inverse of the Billy Sumption karate kick pull kick. Like he was just so into it. It was just such a showmanship thing. Regardless of whether or not we won, who knows? It was 2003. That was a long time ago. But the point is, everything clicked when I heard that. Everything made so much more sense because before that and after, I've never seen anybody do that kind of thing, let alone at the rollout of a foosball table event like that. So Johnny Lott, number 17.
Johnny originally from Texas, then moved to Southern California. We were very familiar with him there during the early 90s with his striker tour. And again, yeah, you're right. Everything he does on the table, and he's a very talented player. Even when he was done playing competitively, he could get on the table and do some things. No question about it. But it was always with a flair, with the kick, with this, with that. That's Johnny Lott. That's Johnny Lott.
Johnny Horton used to look you in the eyes. He didn't even, when he was playing a match, Johnny Horton would shoot a pull shot and look you in the eyes, especially if you're in the audience, and say, "Chicks dig the long ball." Johnny Lott would say, "Chicks dig the mule kick." All right.
Well, I think maybe he did. I'm not sure he said it out loud, but I'm sure he was thinking it.
Was it the right leg or the left leg?
That's immaterial here,
That's
Tom.
But no, the left leg in doubles would if he's playing forward would take care of your goalie pretty good.
They have to be a good goalie.
But Lott, again, another guy, and I think this is a theme with many of the players that we're talking about tonight, and we'll continue to see it on this list. Guys who were really good goalies, great goalies, guys who would make a top 10 all-time goalie list, right? But were also really good singles players. And there's something to be said. And Lewis Cartwright, I think, would be included there as well. Guys who were just great goalies who could also play great forward. Don Swan, great goalie, great singles player as well.
We may continue.
Next, the player ranked at number 16 on the FoosTalk Live Top 25 Single Foosball Players on the U.S. Tour. Mike Bowers.
Yeah, Mike Bowers, this is the first generation of major pro tour players. This is a guy who helped develop the style of play that would continue on. Mike, and we've heard him talk about it many times, about how he played in a tournament in 1973, the first national championship up in Missoula, Montana, and he was able to win that one. And he tells the story as well, maybe it was even in Foosballers, about how, he went to the first big major championship event ever, a $50,000 event at Elitch Gardens in Denver, Colorado back in 1974. In fact, guys, we're coming up on the 50th anniversary of that here in a couple of years, which I think is going to be fun to look back at. But he won that singles title, and he took the trophy home to his dad, and he took the $10,000 or whatever he wanted. He said, "Check it out, Dad. This is what I've been doing all night, every night, of going out there and playing, and look what it got me." He was on the front page of the Denver Post, and it was quite a thing. But he was a pioneer who, along with other early tour players, really helped to create the art of singles. One of just 3 players to ever win titles on TS, Dynamo, and Tornado. But again, the bulk of his singles success came from basically 1973 to about 1977. And then he, like a lot of these other guys that we talked about and are going to continue to talk about, began to focus on being a goalie. This, again, is one of the greatest goalies of all time, who was also a good singles player. And we still see Mike. We just saw him a month ago at the Colorado State Championships. He always comes out to participate in that Hall of Fame ceremony. Still very, very up to date on what's going on in foosball. A fan even checks in here. We had a great interview with him on here. He was number 13 on our list of the top 50 greatest players of all time. That's the full body of work considered. Here, number 16 in singles. And again, predominantly because of those early years when he had such immediate success and such influence on the direction of singles foosball.
Yeah, I'll just be quick about Mike Bowers. The list of accolades and wins is lost over time. The guy was winning so much, and I hung out with Grant Nelson recently. It was at the last Thunderdome event, and these guys have such high praise for Mike Bowers. I will tell you that when he had major titles in every table except for Tornado, and he played with Scotty Wyman in that open doubles event, and they played Fernando, my buddy Fernando, and Dana Marr. And Mike Bowers systematically bricked Fernando, took him out of his game, and not unlike Rick Martin, who we spoke to earlier. There's something about when the skill level calibrates and equalizes, or even the skill level is probably superior. Let's give Fernando and Dana the superior skill level when facing Mike Bowers. But that doesn't matter because the mental strength, the mental toughness, the awareness and the poise under pressure is always going to be the great equalizer. And just like Rick Martin, even more so for Mike Bowers, the guy is a winner between the ears. And that's how he persevered as a singles champion and a doubles champion with major titles on every table. And let's not forget that anyone who's listening to this and gleaning stuff and trying to learn stuff about foosball, we've seen between Adam and Jim and of course Tom, we've seen hordes of super talented people come and go that never win anything. The lightning fast, every rod, every direction, power, speed, they don't win anything. There's an unlimited number of those guys. They don't win because they don't have it between the ears. And we're going to see as we climb this list even further. As long as the mental aptitude and guys that have one brain cell, like Lewis Cartwright, they win. How do they win? I don't know. They just do it. Anyway, I want Adam to take over because it just goes downhill from here.
Wow. Hey, why start self-limiting now, Mark? That's impressive.
Take the governor off.
Take the governor off. I keep coming back to this, which is backwards to you, unfortunately. But this is a great document in foosball history because there's this section here, the table soccer players poll, which again backwards, unfortunately. But it takes the best players at that time. 40 plus players were reached out to in about 1986. You've got Dan Kaiser, Doug Furry, Mike Bowers, Greg Perry, Johnny Lott, Laurie Schreiber. I mean, people that are going to be on this list and the last list that we had. So that just tells you the pedigree of when they talk about from table to table the top most intimidating players, the top singles players, according to these players back then. Number one, most top 5 all-time most intimidating players, according to those players at that time, tournament soccer. Number 1, Jim Wiswell. Number 2, Mike Bowers. Top 5 all-time greatest singles players, according to those players. Number 1, Doug Furry. Number 2, Dan Kaiser. Number 3, Mike Bowers. Top 5 toughest goalies to score on, Doug Furry, Brent Bednar, Mike Bowers. There's a theme here with Mike Bowers. What he can do in singles isn't just what he can do, and Mark, you're saying this, in between the head, in between the ears, what he's doing. His ability to intimidate and come at you and what it is that you're doing is amazing. And it's in the head of all the other players at that time frame that it was still there a decade after it happened. Now, I want to talk about this because it raises the question when we talk about foosball and we talk about its history and we talk about how everything looks through the lens of what was normal or what we used to accept. Mike Bowers' first world's win in open singles was Elitch Gardens in 1974. I spoke to Cal Rogers, the architect of the tournament soccer $1 Million Tour. That tournament, there was no time limits for possessions. What does that mean? What does that change? What does that make us think about somebody's legacy? I don't know if it does. I don't know if it changes anything. I don't know if it changes how we think about people's legacy now versus just 10 or 15 years ago. Mark, when you and I won pro doubles, the rules were completely different. What happens when a ball gets off the table? It goes back to the 5 back then, right? Does that change? Does that diminish what we did? I don't know.
Adam, in some ways it's more impressive. And so I'll give you a real quick analogy. People ask me if I have to pick like 3 receivers, pick number 1. You want Don Hudson, Jerry Rice, or Randy Moss? I'm like, give me Don Hudson all day. You want to know why? There's no pass interference rule. They're like molesting this guy as he's running down the field. He's catching the ball anyway. He held every major receiving record into the modern era, and you could put your hands in his pockets while he's running up the field. So in some ways, no time limits is psychotic, right? Would you ever play a tournament with no time limits? I mean, seriously, it's crazy, right? I don't know.
I know, but no,
it was the 1970s. Nobody could sit on the ball. Come on.
but
I know where you're going with that. That's rude, Jim.
Yeah.
That's rude.
that crosses a line. Anyways, but anyways, the point though is that I think I just want to highlight, because we can look at the numbers, we can look at the stats, but I think it's really important in the context of what we're doing here in developing this record of what once was, to look at it in a context. Like, what does that mean for Mike Bowers and where he is sitting here at 16 on this list? And what does that mean for number 5, 4, 3, 2, 1? What does it mean for Lewis Cartwright? We don't know. I mean, this is the fun part about all this. So Mike Bowers, number 16, bringing us thoughts.
Yeah, Lewis is sitting at home right now saying, I could have kicked Bowers' butt. I know what you're thinking. Mike Bowers, the player, voted the player of the decade for the 1970s. And imagine that, guys. First ever big major championship tournament in Denver, $50,000 in 1974. You're playing foosball. You've been playing foosball in Missoula the previous year, and you come here to Denver. You're playing this big event. How exciting that must have been for everybody. And Mike Bowers brought the title home.
Some of the most moving moments in the Foosballers movie was featuring Mike Bowers. His reminiscence of what the game was, to see it through his eyes. That was just an extraordinary part of that movie.
Yeah, every time I see him, whenever we see him, he tells great stories, some of which I've heard for the first time. But he is a great storyteller and really brings back the feel of that era and right on through the 70s better than anyone. And a guy that definitely, if you ever have a chance to sit down and have a beer with Mike Bowers, do so, because the man can tell a story and he's got a lot of them. And what a great player.
I thought it might be fun just to eliminate real quick. So that list goes on, and you also go on to Johnny Lott and Steve Simon and Mike Bowers, actually, the goalies that they had a hard time scoring on. Lott's number 1 was Furry, and let's see, Simon didn't go there, but Bowers' top goalie was Mike Bowers.
There you go.
I'm not even joking, but
like that
takes some chutzpah.
It does, no question about it. So tonight we get 3 players from the TS era in our 16 through 20. Don Swan, who never won a world championship, yet is inarguably in the right position, I think. This is again a player who was so influential, and the great Lewis Cartwright, a man who maybe underachieved a little bit just because he kind of turned away from singles a little or didn't put the energy into it. But an interesting list, and we're down to the final 15 guys. And I'd love to hear those of you out there who haven't heard a name maybe they expected to. Go ahead and post that in the Twitch chat on who you'd like to see maybe coming up next week or beyond, or a player that maybe you hope that we don't overlook.
Let them speculate. Absolutely.
Yeah, are there any questions in the chat? I haven't been following it that closely.
Yeah,
anybody? Go ahead.
Well, Lewis is saying. Go ahead.
He would have crushed him. Yeah, Lewis is just saying he would have crushed Bowers. Yeah.
Because he couldn't block a rollover, and I probably would have crushed Bowers because maybe he would crawl right into your dome, bro, and eat you alive.
And Johnny was. I mean, we say what we say. We say what we say about Johnny, but Johnny Lott is passionate about foosball, more so than I think a lot.
Yeah, and passion is a good attribute. It's a good thing to have.
Yes.
Passion with realistic direction probably would be more productive.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Hey, good stuff though. This is fun as we work our way down to the 15 now. Who will be number 1? Who's going to be 11 through 15? And I can tell you this: in the top 15 guys, there is a player who never won a world championship yet is in the top 15 all-time greatest singles players.
Yeah, can you guess who it is in chat? We won't tell you if you're right or wrong.
But I can already tell you there's going to be controversy about that. Yeah, I've already heard about it. A lot of controversy.
Heard about it?
But I've heard people speculate that are smart.
Yeah, and that's what's neat about this whole list is that people who speculate about it and are smart about foosball have maybe some differing opinions. Maybe they'll support some of what we have offered here, but that's what makes this so interesting. And I know the next time I go to a tournament, which won't be till next year, I'm gonna hear it from people as we did on the top 50 last year. And that again, that's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to have those kinds of discussions, especially with people who were there, who saw these players up close and personal.
You know what we learned from the first list is that the top 50 list is how bias works, how people's filters kind of influence the way objectivity, and we're all accountable to that. And the first list showed us that depending on your mind frame, things were either out of whack or someone should have or should not have been in a certain place. It's going to be true for this list as well, where depending on what era you played foosball in, if you're a Dynamo guy or a TS guy or a Tornado guy, if you've been playing for 10 years or 20 years or 5 years, you're going to have your own bias. And I think that's the great thing about having some differing personalities that contributed to this list is hopefully we moderate that bias because it's impossible to avoid some of that. I think it was impossible to avoid some of it. So.
Yeah, no doubt. I think you have a little bit of a tornado bias, but that's your experience. Adam was a tornado player, is a tornado player, but has TS sensibilities and an appreciation of history. Of course, Dave Gumbison, a man, as we talked about last week, maybe the only other guy that's had a greater career for so long has been Todd Lafredo. And again, Adam does his research. And then some of us actually started back then and kind of were at least peripheral witnesses to a lot of what happened right on through the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and 2010s and beyond.
So Lewis is mentioning something in chat that I'm really curious about. Lewis Cartwright, who is arguably probably one of the best players in the United States Tour. He is, right? I mean, he is. Lewis is. But he's saying he would love to have seen those great players from the golden age of foosball, the 70s, right? And I know what I think as a foosball historian. Like, I always wonder, like, what's going to, what would that look like? But I really wonder, looking at the mind of players that have competed at that high level, what goes on in their head when they think about like does Dante Bichette think about playing freaking Warren Spahn? Like, what are the Warren Dante Bichette just popped in my head. That might not be the best comparison. I don't know,
Well,
Lewis. Talk. Mark.
Well, I think Mike Bauer said it best during the Foosballers documentary, where he says you get these debates, but one of these guys is still here. Todd Lafredo just got to the finals of open doubles at the Worlds, and he's like, so. And my analogy for that is Todd wasn't even the best player on the TS Tour. There's this old timey picture of Allwell and Lott, and Todd is like the worst. Laurie Schranz, he's like the 10th best player in a picture of 10 people. So I think there's something to be said about people persisting. Now, my camera keeps going off. Lafredo had some incredible things going for him, like he's a physical ability and stamina is otherworldly. I don't know if I'm cutting in and out. Am I cutting?
You
in
are,
and
yeah.
out? Yeah.
I want you
anyway,
to.
I was just my camera keeps going off. I'm going to shut up.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, some of these players, if they would have stuck around, you get another analogy. Rick Martin comes out and wins expert singles. These guys, if they would have stuck around, if the initiative and money was there, you'd have a lot of great. I'm done. My camera keeps turning off.
Yeah, and the whole what could have been sort of thing, the post the crash of TS, and if those players had have continued, or if Federico Collignon had continued, all of these what could have been, you almost can't even use them as factors when compiling a list like this. The fact that you have to just consider who was there, what that era looked like, what the competition looked like, and not say, well, what if this guy had continued? That almost isn't a factor, when at least in my mind, when putting together this list. But it is fascinating to think about, Mike Trout going back and facing Walter Johnson back in 1932 in baseball.
Sure.
So I keep hopping around on the screen here from lower left to upper right.
Yeah, I feel like I'm getting dizzy. Oh, you said dizzy first.
It's a game of musical images here.
Jim, Lewis is a font of information here, and he's bringing up something that you've talked about. He's talking about how he says that he believes that any great player of any era would be great in any other era. And this is an interesting conversation to have when we talk about, say, Orion Moore. And when people say that, it was like a weaker field that he was playing in, and but I say people, I mean Mark, obviously. But you've very much said, he's a big fish in any pond.
Yeah. No, and I think you can say that about the players from the 70s competing today. Obviously, they would have developed and evolved differently, but it's here. It's what's between the ears. How do you perform under pressure? How do you organize your thoughts? How do you prepare for matches? All of these things. How do you think 2, 3, 4 moves ahead? How do you table manage? All of these things are common threads, I think, throughout the various eras among the greatest players. And so I think there's certainly some truth, a lot of truth, to what Lewis Cartwright is saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
We also mentioned with Ryan especially his gas factor. Does he give a
If he's playing in the 1970s when guys were making 60 and 70 grand a year in the 1970s, he is guessing.
Oh, he is.
So to
Yeah,
speak.
no, so to speak. And one other thing, I just have to follow this up because this was a really good. Oh, look, he's in portrait mode now. How embarrassing.
Mm-hmm.
Lewis said, Tony says the same thing about he wishes he could experience or played those players. So at the Moneyball earlier this year, the great Dan Kaiser showed up at the tournament, and I got to take a picture of Dan Kaiser and Tony Sprademan. Because Tony was like, yeah, I want to go meet the guy because he'd heard about him, but Kaiser, I think he's during that golden age of foosball, he's the only person that won open
3
singles,
world championships,
right?
Won it twice,
right? That's something. And this is somebody who said he wasn't the most physically gifted, he wasn't the most talented, but he tried his ass off, and that's echoed in what Tony says sometimes, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, for sure. And again, I think, and we're going to talk, I think, a little more about Dan Kaiser as we move forward. But the fact that he won 2 in that era, none of the great big names did. No one else did except for him, is pretty impressive. And again, that's why this job is so tough. You take that era, 1974, 75 through 1981, and how much credence do you give to players who were successful in that rather short time period? And in my opinion, it's a lot. It's concentrated, but certainly if you were successful in that era, it's not like we're live, Mark. It's you got to give credence to these guys who were successful in that time period, among others. So
absolutely,
these conversations are fascinating. Hi, Mark.
Especially now,
and these, and we're going to continue with this eras, different tables. The length of a time period for some of these players, right, who are 40 years in. All of these factors are going to become even more and more apparent as we move forward on this list in the next few weeks.
Here's one of those things that I've always speculated about. When you look at a person like Todd Lafredo, he's 62, still finishing in the top. How much time, how much longer can he do that? Physically.
I don't think much longer.
Right.
Someone was telling, I think it was, gosh, who's the guy? Why am I forgetting his name? Someone who's with Todd a lot was just saying that for the first time, Todd was talking about how tired he gets at foosball tournaments and playing less events. So Todd is like unnatural foosball physical specimen. We can't take that away from him, but we are seeing the longevity. And this is a guy who used to play like in the 90s, he would play everything like Rico did, and he would win everything. He'd win goalie wars, like forward shootout, play every single event. That narrowed down. And the funny thing about Todd, I think it started in 77. His focus at the World Championships was always open doubles. It was like open singles was always an afterthought. It was always open doubles, but all in the 90s, he would triple at all the majors. He would win singles, mix, and doubles, right? Remember, he'd win everything. And then before Terry started winning everything, Todd was winning everything. And then he started. So go ahead, Jim.
No, I can tell you, Todd is on the list. It might surprise some people where he is on this list, certainly compared to where he was on the top 50. And there are reasons, and we'll get into that as the list unfolds. And that's going to be a fascinating talk. I really think as we move forward now, and all of us become a little more familiar with the players on the list, we're going to get a little more long-winded about this. There's a lot to talk about, different angles to kind of attack this from. And it's what made our top 50 so fascinating. And I think it's moving forward here. It's what's going to make the next 3 weeks fascinating as well.
So care to speculate as to the next episode? Now, this particular episode of FoosTalk Live number 137 is recorded and is going to be put out there for public consumption on Sunday. At our normal time, but we won't be live on Sunday. So the next time we get together will be
the 18th. I believe it's the 18th of December, the week before Christmas. And then, of course, Sundays are Christmas and then New Year's Day as well. So we'll resume the last 2 weeks in early January, which it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Looking forward to finishing it off in 2023. It seems like decades off. It's still, time doesn't.
And then, guys, I think probably we don't want to wait a year before we do, like I don't know, the top 15 female singles players.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Which I think is also going to be a fascinating exercise in foosball history as well.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think yes. I mean, I actually got goosebumps, Jim, just thinking about that, because that's a whole nother level of conversation that I don't think we talk about at all. So no, that's going to be good. Oh man, there's so much conversation here. There's so many people talking in chat, just talking about. There's just so much we could talk about, but I guess we could be done, except for the fact that Lewis Cartwright just said that the only reason why Todd's doing well now is because the field's weaker.
That's not fair, because I would say that the field, in terms of volume, is not what it used to be. But no matter what, you still get, no matter what era, you get 5, 6, 10 people that are playing lights out that you got to get through. Whether it's Ryan Moore, Tony Spredeman, you got the great kids from Costa Rica, young guys. There is an argument there, Lewis. I'll agree with you. The argument, absolutely, it was. We've gone through this, and I don't want to rehash it now about the field being so much smaller, but it doesn't mean it's any less intense when you get to the get to the clutch, when you get to the people you got to get through at the very end. So
the top end is still really, really good.
Yeah.
The depth of field maybe isn't there. The numbers in attendance, the numbers in a bracket aren't there necessarily, but that top end is still awfully good.
Oh yeah. Some of the best ever.
Lewis, of course, does say that Todd is also Todd. It's not just the weaker field. It's just Todd is Todd.
You said one brain cell, Mark?
Hey, Keith Glenn, but Keith Glenn's chiming in. And Keith, this is what I mean about institutional or era bias. I'd argue the parity of the 90s was a result of less dominant individuals. I don't know if it's indicative of weaker competition. Dude, being in the 90s, not only did you have a lot more people, you had a lot more people that practiced their asses off.
Yeah.
And that matters.
Eight winners in 10 years. That tells you something right there. Eight players capable of winning in 10 years. And Robert Martyrs.
Oh, God.
Look at you. Yeah, I was going to be the one that was like,
who didn't win. He's certainly capable of winning.
So Wednesday night.
Didn't win. But that's another guy. You throw him on the list, and there's another name or two we could put on there who didn't win during that decade, but could have.
Right.
Yeah.
But it really was not. But it speaks to that question when we talk about the volatility of who is winning decade by decade, right? Obviously, the 90s, I think that's indicative of a very heavy-handed field, right? A bunch of people that are really into it, which I think not only does that speak to the winners that did win in the 90s, it speaks to Kaiser winning twice in that period that he did win, and then it makes you talk about the inevitable question of the last 2 decades of the people who consistently win.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like, where does it go? It's
Robert Martyrs didn't win in the 90s. Don Swan didn't win in the 90s, But you're right. No question about it. And we could go on and on with this kind of conversation, which is what makes the sport of foosball and its history so very interesting.
Yeah. And the game goes on. Of course, the next time we get together on the 18th, then we'll be counting down once again on the top 25 male singles players on the U.S. Tour. Looking forward to that next list. So
wait,
guys,
wait. No. Hold on.
Can we talk about Keith Glenn's question?
Address that, Mark. Address that. No, before we wrap up, address that, Mark.
Oh my God.
Read it.
Easy.
Read it and address it.
Let me read the question. So I'm going to, and maybe we'll take a shot at this. So Keith said, Rico came in, and what happened to that parity? All those guys were still around. Well, first of all, Rico is a unicorn. He is a generational all-time talent, which I don't know if those variables will ever come together. His weakest table was Tornado, and he's probably the most dominant Tornado world champion in the history of that foosball table. And that foosball table has been the dominant table for 40 years. Rico is just like, Rico's unreal, man. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the guy's legacy and history overseas, but they have records of that guy going undefeated for never losing to people ever.
There was a weekend. There was a couple of different world championships I covered in Europe where he did not lose a match the entire weekend in anything. And his, the number of world championships, we'll never know the total. Maybe he does. But I also want to remind you, Rico really broke through in 1998, right? When he finished second in open doubles at the Hall of Fame Classic in Vegas, then played with Lafredo, won open doubles in 98. But he finished second to Terry Moore in 98. Johnny Horton won in 2001. Billy Pappas put together 4 world championships wins. Tony Sprademan won in 2003 and 2008. Ryan Moore then with a victory later in that decade as well. So as we'll talk about as this goes on, during that Frederic Collignon era, he was dominant in doubles, won 12 out of 15. But in singles, not quite as dominant.
5. He won 5, I think, in that 15-year span. And let me say one last thing, because I want to address this thing with Keith Glenn organically, because I was there. And so the way it was when there were all these players, there was way more players back then. And it wasn't just a saturated group of people. There wasn't just more players. And the example is this: when the brackets were that deep and filled, unlike now, you had to play those extra matches. There was no quick buys. Everyone had to play the rounds. And what would happen was, and this happened, like a guy like me and Fernando, who practiced in our garage for the entire summer, like hundreds of hours of practice, go to the World Championships and upset the top teams in the world. We upset number 2 seed Dave Gummison and Steve Mose at the time at the World Championships. This was what was happening. These masters had to deal with these freaking unknown dudes that were practicing in their basements, and we'd go match ball or beat them, and it was the same thing in singles. I would play a master to match ball in singles. I might lose the match, but I put that guy on notice. So it wasn't just parity. It wasn't just the more people. It was incredibly competitive back then. I think it's really saturated now. And not with the volume or the skill level, I don't think. Anyway.
No, that's a great point, Mark. Those early matches for a lot of these guys, now they would play teams who were capable of playing at a very high level, just not consistently. But you may go up against a team that gives you everything, takes you 5 games early on in this event, and you've got to play 8-10 matches to get all the way through to the finals. So no doubt about it. That was part of what made that decade, the second golden era, was not only the number of players who could win, it was the depth of field all the way down into the expert division as well. So a great point there, Mark.
Yeah, Mark, you should frame that. I don't think you hear that compliment that often.
I want to take that pencil out of your hair and stab you.
It's a lightsaber. And by the way, could you show us a newspaper from today's date? I want to make sure that you're safe, because I don't know where you're at, dude. I need some proof of life.
My captors are.
I don't know which basement you're in, but I'm coming, dude.
I'm supposed to ask for more guns before the end of the broadcast. Send more guns. Send more guns.
Where's guns and money?
Anyways,
anyway, back on track here. Hey, this is a lot of fun putting together these lists. Had so much fun last year, and it's equally fun here. We're 40% through the list, and looking forward to unveiling the rest of it here over the next, now I guess, 5 weeks.
What is that?
I should write it backwards. Do I need to write it backwards?
Hey, that's good.
It looks good here.
Yeah, that's good. Oh, I want to throw this out before we wrap up, because I know we're going to wrap out. There's a lot of good chat going on, and I want to talk about it, but we just don't have time. It's getting late. But would you all that are here in Twitch and maybe hear this later, like if we open up, and I'm not saying that Mark or Jim or Tom or anybody needs to come and do this. I'm not trying to lock you into something, but we can open up the Twitch stream 30 minutes early, the next episode, and just chat.
Yeah.
And just talk, and just have it go like the show. I mean, we can talk about it behind the scenes, but y'all in Twitch want to do that, because I think this really brings up a lot of questions.
So just general questions.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have. It can be about the top 20, 25, because we're not going to unveil those till later. But yeah. No, that sounds great.
Well, listen, I will ask everyone in chat now to follow this channel, please, so you know when we jump on early. So please do us a solid and follow the channel. Second thing is, you see that little cage behind Adam? He likes to take off his clothes and roll around on there in 60 grit sandpaper.
60 grits. Yeah. No.
So that's what he's going to do next week.
And then I have My Little Pony.
Oh, no. Nice. Dude, you are creepy, dude. You are creepy. Dude, get out of here. Oh my God, silence.
You think that's creepy? Look at this. Whoa.
That's not creepy, Jim. What Adam has, because what Adam just did is super
don't one last thing. I don't know if you can see it back here, but this is the trophy that they were so nice to give me in Colorado State. It's this 45-pound little it's like the plexiglass that I would put in front of me, and then a microphone right behind it. Tommy and Sherry Chapman, Tim Walters, TSK in Colorado were so nice to to give me this appreciation award. Surprise! My wife knew about it for 2 weeks. I didn't, and I haven't let her forget about that since.
It's like my first son.
That's kind of a lie by omission, isn't it? Isn't it?
It is. That's a lie by omission.
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, so I've added it to the collection back here, along with the 4-on-4. See right up there, the 4-on-4, Adam. You see
yeah.
solid.
Oh,
sorry,
the greatest win.
There it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Greatest,
You look at brackets and who you beat to justify if you were good or not. We are good, Jim.
Yeah.
And whoever we
well,
played
if
with,
you look at who we beat, and then you look how they all did at the World Championships just a few months later. Tony Spredeman, Kevin Romero, Brandon Munoz.
Oh my God, are we really talking about?
Calm down, Mark.
Drunken stupor of an event.
Blink twice if you're safe, Mark.
Keep it down.
Table management was brilliant. I used 2 timeouts every game. I did, not the rest of the team, just me.
He kept going. He kept going to the restroom.
Where are you going? Do commentary.
Can we get out of here?
Yeah, let's wrap it up. Yeah.
Shut this down. I got to go to work tomorrow, freaks.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
I'm at work.
Who doesn't?
It's a school night. But
not Adam.
Cheers to our Twitch TV audience tonight. Thank you guys for tuning in and joining us. We're going to do this a lot. So looking forward to your comments in the future, and thank you for joining us, including Lewis. Thank you so much.
See you, Lewis.
Yeah.
See you, everybody.
So, guys, let's get together again. This is coming round again on the 18th, and we'll be continuing the countdown of the top 25 male singles players on the U.S. Tour. Happy holidays. Foosball tournaments are everywhere. FoosTalk Live proudly presents a weekly update of events near you with the FoosTalk Live Tournament Beat. Here's what's up. We start the new year off right with the 716 Foosball Club. They proudly present the 6th annual Foosball Tournament, January 7th, 2023 at Bison Billiards Transit Road in Williamsville, New York. The Thunderdome No Pro Tampa, January 6th through January 8th, Holiday in Clearwater, Florida. Then it's the 2023 Kentucky State Tour Kickoff, February 1st through the 5th, Clarion Hotel in Lexington, Kentucky. It's the Moneyball Northwest Foosball Tournament, February 16th through the 19th at the Hyatt Regency, Portland, Oregon. It's the $5,000 DFW Championship of Foosball, February 17th through 19th. Carrollton Chop Shop Sports Garage, Carrollton, Texas. The Wisconsin State Championship is March 16th through the 19th at Mad Apple Billiards, Appleton, Wisconsin. The 2023 Hall of Fame Classic, taking place April 12th through the 16th at the Golden Nugget in Las Vegas, Nevada. The Tornado Championships, August 30th through the 4th, 2023 at the Clarion Hotel, Lexington, Kentucky. Each week we do our best to give you the most up-to-date listing of foosball tournaments near you. If you have an event you'd like to add, send us all the details to info@foosballradio.com. Tune in every week for the FoosTalk Live Tournament Beat. FoosTalk Live is a product of Foosball Radio. With gratitude, we recognize our Foosball Radio Patreons. Our FoosTalk Live sponsor, original-leonhardt-usa.com. And thanks to InsideFoos.com for use of their audio during the show. Tune in again next week for another episode of FoosTalk Live. In the meantime,
we'll see you foozin'.